Good morning, it's Jo Marie, your student RadTech. How are you today? I hope you're doing great. Welcome to my presentation where we talk about many things regarding radiography. Let us look onto the objectives of this presentation. At the end of the video, viewers must be able to compare digital radiography and computed radiography mechanisms, identify the advantages and disadvantages of digital and computed radiography, identify 10 digital radiographic artifacts, and define picture archiving and communication systems. Okay, let us begin. In this presentation, we will be focusing on computed and direct radiography. So as an introduction to CR and DR, they're both digital types of systems. Digital imaging was originally developed in the 1980s and gained acknowledgement in the early 1990s, but was rarely actually used even with the development of PACS. CR, to begin with, it was the first modernized system to replace film screen radiography, which utilized multiple screens. CR was just the beginning to develop to replace screen film method, and it uses the PSP plate and was read with a laser scanner device. In this period, other digital technologies were surfacing as FOV, which is a large field of view X-ray phosphors, and optical lens to focus the X-ray to a narrow charge coupled device, photo detector panel. To clear up any confusions, a CCD is basically a light-sensitive circuit that stores data from the light in the form of pixels, which is then converted to an electric charge. Critics for CR for having mechanical parts that wear down over time. DR doesn't have this, and CR doesn't save nearly as much time over traditional radiography as to the extent that DR goes. So to introduce DR, moving on, it has many integrated features and even wireless functions to transmit data to the receiving computer. There is a great lack of mechanical parts, which is good. It causes a longer life of the machines due to an integrated system called TFT that houses closer components, and it allows higher travel speeds for the digital information to move across. The final image in DR can be compensated in post-processing if the exposure brightness is too high, and then it can be formatted, sent out to the radiologist and anyone else more readily. Post-processing is basically just after the original radiograph is taken. It can be edited a little bit instead of having to retake it. As mentioned earlier, DR uses a CCD and a TFT through indirect and direct capture methods. It also creates a great histogram that's unmatched by CR. So, in direct and direct capture, there are two subtypes, CCD and TFT. The CCD is too big to understand how that works. It consists of single tiles that are joined by tiling and the seams groove between them, making an equal response or blurriness, which is actually a disadvantage to CCD. Direct radiography and TFT, the X-rays are absorbed by the photodetectors and converted to transmittable electric charges like I was explaining. The indirect capture causes resolution loss, sometimes because of the scintillators. Direct capture only uses a photoconductor and has more uniform detection ability over indirect. So as for CR is still praised because of its retrofitting ability, how it's able to install onto hardware existing devices and upgrade it to a newer CR system, whereas DR cannot be retrofitted oftentimes and completely new hardware may have to be installed. In this video, we'll be covering cassetteless digital radiograph systems. Cassetteless digital radiography is different from CR radiography in that there is no cassette or imaging plate reader. Cassetteless digital radiography can be broken down into either direct or indirect systems. Indirect radiography can be further broken down into either thin flat panel transistors called TFTs or charge coupled device systems called CCDs. Indirect TFT systems are composed of three main layers: the top scintillation layer, a middle photodiode layer, and the bottom TFT array. The top scintillation layer is where incoming incident X-ray photons are converted into light photons. A scintillation is nothing more than a burst of light. Each photon that strikes the scintillation layer creates a small burst of light energy. Unfortunately, one downfall of using a scintillation layer is that it produces light isotropically or all directions. I mean, or in all directions. The isotropic nature of this layer thus acts to decrease spatial resolution since the converted light photons are of a greater size than the incoming incident X-ray photons. Basically, the scintillation layer creates a small amount of blur on each image. After the scintillation layer comes the photodiode layer. The photodiode layer is comprised of a semiconducting material known as amorphous silicon. The photodiode layer works by converting the incoming light photons from scintillation into electric charge. The electric charge produced by the photodiode layer are then transferred to the TFT layer. The TFT layer is comprised of an array of very small detector elements or DEL, DEL. Each DEL is comprised of pixel detector, which is the active element within each DEL, a storage capacitor which stores the electric charge produced by the pixel, and a TFT that acts to open and close the release of electric charge, thus producing the digital image. The CCD system is the other form of cassette glass digital radiography. CCD systems differ from the TFT systems in that with the CCD systems, there is no photocathode or TFT layer. The scintillation layer within CCD systems are optically coupled to each CCD sensor chip by either lenses or fiber optics. The CCD are able to both convert light photons into electrical signals as well as send the electrical signals to the computer for processing. The other cassetteless digital radiography system is the direct conversion radiography system. This system is comprised of an amorphous selenium-based semiconductor and a TFT. This system works by applying a high voltage charge to the top surface before the extra exposure is made. The interaction between the incident X-ray photons and the high voltage charge causes the selenium atoms to. Now I'm going to explain about the principle of computed radiography. Firstly, set up the patient and the imaging plate. Then the patient is exposed to the X-ray. After the exposure to X-ray, the CR plate is mechanically removed from the cassette and the CR plate is placed into the CR reader unit. During the exposure to the imaging plate, photons strike the valence band and transfer its energy to the electron. This causes the electron to excite to a high energy level, which is from the valence band. During deliver light stimulus to charge the electron back up to the conduction band will it cause electron to excite. The electron should use up energy and light is emitted. The light produced is then sent to a photomultiplier tube which is an ultra-sensitive photomultiplier tube in order for the DMT to interpret the light and convert it to an electrical signal. The electrical signal is then sent analog to digital converter or ADC. The ADC would digitize the signal and then onto a pixel matrix, thus the image. Conversely, when discussing digital X-ray, there are two types of systems to choose from. Computed radiography refers to imaging technology using an intermediate process, phosphor plates. The phosphor plates in their cassettes are exposed to the X-ray the same way as film during exposure. The X radiation is absorbed in the phosphor plate, forming the latent image. Latent images are extracted from the plates when a laser beam generated inside the reader illuminates the phosphor plate. The laser beam provides enough energy to reverse the latent image formation, process causing the plates to emit photons of light. The photons are detected and translated into an image that could be enhanced or manipulated, processed and displayed on the monitor, transmitted electronically, or printed out on paper or transparent film similar to X-ray. This technology has been around since the 1980s. Some of the advantages of CR include less file space. CR can be retrofitted to existing X-ray equipment. The reason that we want with CR, frankly, is because it's less expensive and it allows us to keep the equipment that we already had. CR has excellent image quality and has the ability to enhance them. Also, CR has the ability to share information. As soon as the image is taken and is sent to the PACS, it is available to be viewed by any physician throughout the system. There are some issues that we need to think about and remember and important for the techs in practice, particularly rates of radiation dose issues. We've got to learn the ways to know what the proper dose is, which are different than just looking at the film. The only disadvantage is the learning curve. Other disadvantages include having to use an expensive imaging plate. Also, there's a little real-time saving benefit over traditional radiography. Let's talk DR or digital radiography. Digital radiography refers to a flat panel X-ray detector. A DR system is equipped with a fixed-size pixelated detector that translates the X-ray radiation directly into an electrical charge. The charge is sent to a processing unit which assembles the image. This option can be expensive and because the detector itself must be matched to the X-ray equipment. These systems are sold as integrated solutions. The advantage of the DR is that it can produce an image immediately after the exposure by moving the latent image directly from the detector using the electronics integrated with the detector. DR does have its advantage like immediate image production, no cassettes, fewer retakes, no more lost films, decrease in the radiation dose to patients and personnel, and increase in overall efficiency. It improves diagnostics and increase in visualization of soft tissue and digital storage. Disadvantages: expensive. Also, mobile radiography requires a wire cable between computer and image sensor. Cross-staple radiography is difficult. Existing X-ray equipment must be modified. DR replacement parts are more expensive. Initial steep learning curve, quickly outdated, and difficult repairs. In conclusions, as mentioned earlier, Each of the two imaging systems has its own set of advantages and disadvantages in a perfect world. There would be a one-size-fits-all solution for every consumer. However, we all know that that's not the case. When choosing which solution works best for your facility, it's important to keep the following in mind: image storage, diagnostic evaluation, ownership costs, patient throughput, image of. Now, let us move on to the different types of digital radiographic artifacts found in the imaging department. So what are artifacts? Artifacts are undesirable objects or structures recorded on the radiography image causing image quality to degrade. These are produced from various factors such as patient motion, poor preparations, radiologic technologies that lack knowledge or training, produced from computed and digital radiographic machines. Let me show you 10 artifacts in digital radiography. Number 1. Loose cone artifacts. You can see white edges on the radiograph. The cone here has fallen out of the X-ray tube and is blocking the collimator from opening. To fix this, just remove the collimator and reattach the cone to the tube port. Second, barcode artifacts. An appearance of barcode on the screen is obvious. This is due to detector failure. Replace the detector if calibration to fix the pixel fails. Third, double exposure artifacts. You can see a duplication of images here. These are caused by two subsequent exposure on same imaging plane. To prevent this from happening, the radiologic technologists must have proper knowledge of using the X-ray equipment. Fourth, poor collimation artifacts. The appearance has unsharp images. One should practice proper collimation in accordance with cassette size and body part. 5. Scratches artifacts. The image has kink marks due to mishandling of imaging plate during cleaning process. To fix this, cassettes and image plated or plates should be handled with care. 6. Light bulb artifacts. You can see a darkening of lower and outer portions of the image. This is due to high exposure and backscattered radiation. We must reduce backscatter by lowering the KVP or KV to prevent light bulb artifacts from happening. 7. Dust artifacts. The appearance of the image has focal radiopacities. The dust particle wedged over imaging plate, that's why this artifact happened. To have a solution, one should practice regular cleaning of imaging plates with proper cleaner, and paper towels should not be used because they leave fibers on the plate. 8. Disparity artifacts. The image appears to have defective scanning resulting in alteration in image contrast. Lower half of it was exposed to laser beam for longer time. These are caused by malfunctioning of rollers in CR reader. To fix this, there must be a periodic cleaning of roller in CR reader by the supplier. 9. Jewelry artifacts. And 10. Umbilical ring artifacts. So let us go to PACS fundamentals. All of you are familiar with the PACS systems. Before there were no PACS systems, so it was film library, and we're going to talk about the differences between film library and working on an environment that has a PACS to see the differences in the workflow. So PACS is very common now, and they consist of a digital acquisition. There is a display workstation, storage devices where we archive the images, and there are components that are interconnected through an intricate network. So there's a whole network that's involved, and we're going to take a look at those networks. So PACS is an electronic version of a film library. So it's how the radiologist is able to view and dictate the images. So here's a typical PACS design. So you have the archive server in the middle. You have the radiology information system, which is your RIS. You have an archive server there. Here's your web server where you can go out to different clients. We call these client servers. And you have the different imaging modalities. So the modalities feed into the archive server and it goes to the radiologist workstation. It also goes into the RIS or RIS while it communicates what the RIS. This goes back and forth. It goes to an archive and then it also goes to the web server which puts it out on little clients than clients. PACS started on the 80s and it served just for mainly ultrasound. With advanced modalities, it was really good for that. So mainly at large research institutions, and as time went on, vendors became more involved in modality-specific proprietary systems were developed. So there is a need for standardization due to each one speaking different language. So with that came the DICOM. So that was the first version was in 1985 and it's universally accepted as a standard. So it's a standard language. It laid the groundwork for future development in PACS. Now every modality in PACS communicates via DICOM. So the DICOM is the language in which it speaks. So each modality or each vendor and modality boasts DICOM capability. So each DICOM statement must be read carefully to determine the extent of the compatibility. Components of your PACS can be broken into three different fundamental parts. So there's the image acquisition, display workstation where we view the image, and then there's the archive servers where we store the image. So those are your three different components. So images are acquired in the digital format. So ultrasound is computed tomography and MRI is acquired in the digital format. So now we have VR, which is also acquired in the digital format. So display workstations, any computer used to view a digital image, so most inner part of PACS, and it's used inside now to the radiology department. So you'll see there this up in ER, you'll see them in the ICU, you'll see them in doctors' offices, they're all over. Your display workstation receives images from archive and it presents images for you to view. So your archive server, so it's in the file room of the PACS typically. So it's what used to be the file room, should I say, or sometimes they have the servers locked up. Most of the time they have to have a double boot system where for HIPAA has to be behind two different locked areas. So consists of a database server, short and long-term storage, and workflow manager. It is the central part of the PACS and it houses all the historic and the current data. So may almost serve as the central hub that receives all images before release. So the workflow. Okay, so how does the workflow happen in radiology? So it's how a process is done step by step or how a task is completed. So how one completes an exam from order entry to your transcribed report. So when we had a film, so this is a film-based workflow. So the order would go in the paper, would be handed to the technologist. So technologists to come get it. We perform the exam here. Then here we process the image. We QC the image, we send it to the radiologist, would actually hang it on a view box for interpretation. The radiologist would dictate into a tape recorder, and then the tape would be sent to the transcribed report, and it would get transcribed by the transcriptionist, and then it would actually the report would be sent back. The radiologist would sign it off. With PACS, the workflow is different in the sense it's so much faster. It's almost instantaneous, which is great. So we get the order of the electronic work list, so we still verify the patient. The order is input into the RIS, and the RIS sends a message to the PACS to find all the historical data on that patient. So whether it's in short-term or long-term archives. So this eliminates the waiting of a film jacket, which is great. So conventional film screen uses large view boxes. So we call them light boxes or view boxes. There's multi-viewer where they alternate, and so it'll slide back. You have like 20 different plates that come up. With early PACS, radiologists thought they need 4 to 6 monitors. Now radiologists have become a lot more comfortable, and it's dropped down to they usually have 2 monitors. The monitor is one of the most important elements. The CRT, they're heavy, they're big, it puts off a ton of heat. They're good because they're really bright, and you can look at it at a 45-degree angle and still be able to see the image. The LCD, they've dropped in price and have improved in quality quite a bit. So in most of departments, you have the LCD monitors because of the size and the resolution and the lack of heat, which is great. They also require less maintenance, and they're able to give off a lot of light, and they are really good when the light in the room is bright. They even still be able to see the image very well. It is important to know what your PACS system is and how would the basic of at work. That was a very long topic, guys. So I hope that you have gained some knowledge out of it. This is Jo Marie, your student RadTech again. And I hope to see you in my next video. Thank you.